Hi, it's Mr. Hammer here. Today we're going to be doing section 3.4, talking about using variables in measurement formulas. When we don't know the dimensions of a figure, we use letters to represent them. For a rectangle, we use B to represent the length of the base and H to represent the height. Now often, instead of B and H, we use L and W to represent length and width. So sometimes instead of a B, you'll see an L, and instead of an H, you'll see a W. Either B and H or L and W are fine. One way to find the area of a rectangle is to use a formula. The formula for the area of a rectangle is area equals base times height. Now instead of writing the word base and instead of writing the word height, we instead use these variables B and H. We write A equals B times H, and we simplify that even further and we get rid of the multiplication sign, because when we have two variables beside each other, we know that there is a silent multiplication sign. So we end up with area equals BH or area equals LW. Base times height and length times width, both of those are the same. When we're talking about the area of a shape, we need to be clear what we are actually measuring. The area is representing the surface. All this space here is going to be considered the area. Sometimes it's called surface area. So it's really good when you're doing area and perimeter to think about real situations. For example, if this was a garden, the area would be measuring the garden flat surface. On the other hand, if we're talking about perimeter, perimeter is going to be measuring the outside. And so in this case, if this was a garden, the perimeter might be measuring a fence, the length of my fence. Now perimeter is a length. It is adding up the entire length of whatever it is we are measuring. So in this case, we're looking at a rectangle. So we're going to be needing to add B plus H plus H. In this circumstance, because we have B plus H and B plus H two times, we can simply write it as B plus H, base plus height, and then we're going to add those up together first, and that's why we put the brackets around them, and then we will multiply by 2. The simplified version then is perimeter equals 2 times B plus H. Or you can of course use length times length plus width. The important thing to remember here is that we are adding length plus width. We are never multiplying them. When you multiply length times width, you get the area. When we are doing perimeter, we are getting what we would call a linear measurement. It's as if we started here and we're walking all around in this direction, and we want to know in one straight line, as if we had a rope. If we were dragging a rope across here from start all the way around and to finish, how long would that rope be? And that is a linear measurement in meters or centimeters or millimeters. However, when we do length times width to get our area, that's giving us units squared. Because in this shape, let's say this was 2 and this was 4, area would be length times width, which would be 4 times 2, which would be 8 units squared. And it would kind of look like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 8 units, and each one of these is 1 unit squared, and we have 8 of those, and it's a surface. Whereas perimeter is walking around. This time I'll do it in red. Perimeter is if I'm starting here, and it's just the outside edge, and it is a length. So perimeter is a length of some amount, and it is in units, not units squared. Whereas area is the surface, and it's going to be in units squared. Now the letters that we use to represent the base and the height, we call these letters variables. Variables in a formula can represent different numbers. When we know the values of the variables, we substitute for the variables. That is, we replace each variable with a number. Now let's look at this square, for example. So a square is actually a rectangle, but all the sides are equal. Now the formula for the area of a square is a little bit different. because you can start with the formula of a rectangle. Let's say the area of a rectangle would be length times width. Well, with a square, all the sides are the same. So they're all S. S, S, S. They're all the same. So it's almost like multiplying length times length. In this case, instead of L, we'll use S. S times S, and that gives us S squared. So the area is going to be S times S, or S squared, for a square. What about the perimeter? The perimeter basically is going to be, as we talked about, adding all our sides. There are 4 sides here. So we're going to add 4 S's together, which is the same as multiplying 4 times S. So 4 times our side length, which is 4 times S, and in the simplest form, perimeter is 4S. So as a review, 4 square, area equals side squared. That means one side multiplied by the other side. So side times side. And that will be in units squared. Whereas perimeter equals 4 times your side length. And that's going to be in units. No, not square units at all. Let's pretend one side length is 3 meters long. How do we write our answer? Well, with formulas, the important thing to do is to write it in 3 stages. First, you start with your formula. I'll mark that as F. So area equals, and I know my formula is S squared. If you forget, just do one side times the other side, because that is the rule for area of a rectangle or a square. Then we're going to substitute for S, because we know what S is. S is 3 meters. So we're going to write 3 meters, and then we're going to be squaring that. 3 meters squared is the same as 3 meters times 3 meters. And these 2 steps here, that's our work. That's what we're figuring out and substituting and working towards getting an answer. When we get a final answer, 3 times 3 is 9. Meters times meters gives us meters squared. Well, that's our answer. FWA. That's a 3-step process that's going to ensure that you get the right answer. And if you don't, you can trace backwards where you may be made a mistake. Let's look at perimeter. So perimeter equals 4 times S. That's our formula. Our work is going to be substituting for S. Well, S in this case was, we said, was 3 meters. So 4 times 3 meters. And our answer is going to be 4 times 3, which is 12. And notice it stays in meters. It's not meters squared. Let's look at an example. A rectangle has base 15 centimeters and height 3 centimeters. Use formulas to find the area and the perimeter. So I start out with my formula. F, area equals base times height. Now I'm going to substitute B equals 15 and 3 equals H. B equals 15 centimeters and H is 3 centimeters. That's my work, W. And now the answer. 15 times 3 is going to give me 45. Centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. And there's my answer. FWA, my formula, substitutions, and final answer, area, always square units. Don't forget, very important. And we can see the square units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 3. This is kind of what it looks like. Each of these little squares here that are not drawn so well equals, each square is 1 centimeter square. And we actually have 45 of these little squares, and each square is 1 centimeter square. So a total of 45 centimeters squared. Perimeter, on the other hand, means we're walking all the way around. We're starting maybe from here, and we're walking all the way around with a piece of string. And so it will not be in square units, it will just be a linear dimension. Linear means a line. So let's take a look at that. Well, perimeter equals 2 times my base plus my height. Very important to add. And think about it. If we walk this length and we walk this length together, that's going to be 15 plus 3. We would not multiply those numbers, because if we multiplied them, we would get the area. Then, because we've got another 15 and another 3, that's where we get the multiplying by 2. And the 2 goes over there. Again, we started with a formula, F. Here's our work step, and our answer will be 2 times 15 plus 3. Well, 15 plus 3 is 18. Multiply that by 2, and we get 36. And the units are centimeters, and there's my answer. And that's it for formulas for area and perimeter and how to use variables. Always remember, write your formula out first, make your substitutions in your work stage, and then your answer, make sure that for perimeter, there are no square units, and for area, there are always square units.